the weight of a gold medal can be enormous on an athlete. But the weight is relative. The weight that you feel is just a direct representation of the baggage that you've either been forced to carry, that you haven't shed yet, or that you can't seem to get rid of. And that could be this pandemic. It could be job loss. It could be, for you, the loss of your father. It could be like life is just straight up hard.
Here we go.
Welcome. Today is Thursday, July 30th, 2020. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. 395, right? 395, episode 395?
You're right. You're always right.
Inching, well, that's definitely not the case. I have been wrong many times. I'm married, so I know this daily. We're inching closer to 400, which is kind of crazy to think about. Last year we celebrated our 300th podcast. Well, kind of around this time. It was in September at Ironman, Wisconsin, and it was actually a live podcast, which is one of our more favorite things to do. I thought it was an actually great experience. Had an awesome time. Had Jessica Jacobs on, which is one of our other coaches, and it's in one of our favorite cities, which is Madison, Wisconsin. We won't be there this year, but we're here today. We come to you twice a week, as we have been for the last 4 years. It seems like. Has it been 4 years? Oh my God, dude!
Yeah, it's 4 years.
At least 4 years, going on 10. It feels.
I'm gonna be in Madison too, man.
I know, dude. It's been a while, but we love it. We talk triathlon, we talk life, we cover everything in between. Both Mike and I, as both coaches and athletes, share our experiences. We cover the obstacles that we've gone through. We cover some of the successes that we've had. We talk about what's going on with our current athletes that we work with. Many times we hop into our Facebook group, which is called Crushing Iron Group. You can hop in there if you'd like and answer one simple question. We'll let you in. A lot of great insight in there. We'll occasionally let the community inside that group drive the podcast by asking us questions that we do our best to answer live on the podcast. To an extent, we can't spend an hour on each one, but we try to at least give a short, clean, and crisp answer that's at least somewhat helpful. And that's what we do. We hopefully offer a easily digestible and consumable conversation. No sponsors, no ads. Our only agenda is to hopefully provide you with content that allows you to be happy and healthy. I'm sure there are many podcasts where you probably can't take everything that we say and apply it to your life because we're all different. We're all living in a different life. We all have different responsibilities. We all have different goals. We all come from different backgrounds. But hopefully there's at least a couple things in there that you can apply. And make it your own. We cover a lot of things and we cover a ton of topics. And the best that Mike and I can do is just share our own experiences. And I think one of the most important things to understand, especially if you're a new listener, is that we're just sharing our experiences, and our experiences aren't going to be yours, and we don't want them to be. Everyone should have their own experience that goes with life, that goes with training, that goes with your trajectory in the sport, and so it's not as simple as a copy and paste platform. It's not do exactly as we do, apply to yourself and see the same. It is hopefully take a little bit of what we say, a little bit of what we can offer, and a little bit of our experience, and apply it to yourself. Mold it in the way that you see fit. Mold it in a way that helps you stay accountable and your commitment, and stay motivated toward reaching your goals. And the only layer that we like to keep that is almost non-negotiable is be happy and healthy. That way you can stay in the sport for a long period of time. You can make it something sustainable. We cover the mental, emotional, and physical aspects of a sport. So take it for what it's worth. Take it with a grain of salt, maybe even some hot sauce on a certain day. But hey, that's what we do, and we appreciate you tuning in on this overcast but humid Thursday morning in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
I have to say, I noticed a post in our Facebook group that was calling for more unrelated banter.
Well,
do you have anything on your mind? I mean, we went to dinner last night.
We're gonna have to not talk, because if Mike and I have always, for the most part, even we started this podcast, I was living in Kansas City, Hayden had just been born, Mike was living in Nashville, and then for about the first year that's where it was, and I moved back to Nashville. We still obviously weren't living in the same house, but we were we wouldn't communicate much even before the podcast. We just hop on, do our thing. And then I ended up moving to Chattanooga. And so we were back again in different cities doing kind of the same thing. And then Mike has recently moved to Chattanooga and is waiting to move into a new place. And so the only Wi-Fi that we have is at my house. And so he comes over, and we have been, at least the last few times, sitting on the back deck chatting a little bit. Today we probably could have started this podcast like 45 minutes ago. In the conversation we were
we had a
having
little
out back.
pre-production meeting.
Exactly, a little pre-production meeting. You've been a part of a lot of those in your past life, but yeah, it's going to be hard to kind of flip the gear, go backwards for a second, and just talk about unrelated things. I don't have anything, dude. I'm just kind of ready to roll. I'm sure we will. We had some requests to make our podcasts, make these video podcasts, which I think is something that we might be tinkering with in the near future. But hey, we'll let that happen as it happens. And hey, if people like it, we try to do it. So we'll just kind of see how things flow down the road.
Baby steps, man. We're gonna need at least a month to kind of get into camera shape, I think.
Dude, that is right. You know what? It's funny you said it, because I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna because everyone likes compliments. So I think what I'm gonna do is, for the first few episodes, I think I'm gonna start out with like a really soft, like, bedside pillow underneath my shirt, just to kind of give myself a little bit more fluff on the belly. And then as the podcast roll, I'm going to kind of shrink it. That way it gives the illusion that I'm at least getting in better shape. People, man, you're starting to look thin on the podcast. You're looking lean. You're looking fit. What are you doing? And then I can hop on some train and try to sell you the new vegan keto specialized superflies diet and some extra bucks out of it. No, but yeah, I'm headed there. I'm not in terrible shape. I'm getting back in good shape, but hey, I'm 40, man. I'm gonna have a dad bod the rest of my life. I'm proud of it. I'm gonna stick with it. I'm the fastest guy in my cul-de-sac, and that's where champions are made.
Champions are made. I've got some lighting tricks in mind, man. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna
appreciate it.
thin us out
now, but
I was actually thinking about starting the first video podcast maybe in a silhouette type of style, where we light from behind us so we can't really see it. It's just that kind of like hidden informant kind of thing.
Hidden. That's like on the Unsolved Mysteries, like where
yeah. We just don't want to like the identity, and we'll garble our voice even a little bit more than Skype already does.
And then slowly over the next 20 podcasts, we'll undim the lights slowly. That way it's kind of a gradual effect. That way you guys can get used to actually seeing our faces. Because it's probably taking you like 300 and what podcasts to get used to these voices that you have to hear. It's going to be kind of a shock and awe effect when you have to stare at our ugly faces for like an hour, if you choose to, and like YouTube, as we sit here and talk and chat in our pajamas, sipping on coffee and doing whatever. So yeah, let's ease the audience in when we do take those baby steps and finally do a live, or a video podcast. Let's definitely ease the audience in. And I think I'm going to go the opposite route. I think instead of getting like a new haircut and new clothes, for the first one, I think I'm just going to go as is, probably going to wear a red t-shirt, probably wear some my blue comfy shorts, probably have my coffee, probably have a hat. And then as the podcast progresses, then I'll start to raise my game a little bit, which is my MO, with fashion. I wear t-shirts and shorts and flip-flops all day, every day. And then if I simply put on like a somewhat nice pair of shorts and like a collared shirt, people are like, dude, where are you going? What's going on? Like, what are you going to some special event? Like, set the bar low. I love to set the bar really, really low, especially when it comes to stuff like that. That way the next rung up is fairly easy to achieve.
I know, dude. Like, yeah, you show up in like a button-up shirt from Chess King and people think that you're going to a wedding.
Dude, I got crap for that at camp. Like every time we go someplace, so we had one of our triathlon camps this last June. We had 25 people come from all over the country. We had an awesome time, and this every Saturday night, or the last night of camp, we always have a big dinner. We go out somewhere, and we usually go to Firebirds, which is like one of our favorite restaurants, kind of our camp thing. It's been a tradition, and given COVID and everything, given COVID, like being inside was a struggle for some places, especially to get 25 people. So we ended up sitting outside at like a restaurant right across the street called Corner Pub. And I always get crap because I never dress up. And my thought process is like, I'm going to Firebirds. I better dress up a little bit. I packed, one collared shirt that I have like hanging up. I didn't even iron. I was going to pack collared shirt, pack my nicer pair of shorts, and I'm going to wear them. And I roll in, and the first 3 comments were, dude, why are you so dressed up? I'm like, seriously? Like, I can't win. Like, I dress up and try to meet the expectations of the athletes and what I should be wearing, and I get, publicly shamed for dressing up in a button-down short sleeve. Like, I mean, come on, give
That's
this
the
dude a
way of
break.
the
I
world now.
struggle. It is, dude. I struggle as is with dressing up and being even somewhat, remotely presentable. But hey, whatever. Lesson learned. I've been kicking it in shorts and in a t-shirt. Like Hayden, even last night when I went and met you and Sam out for dinner, I didn't even change my clothes really. I just like kept on the same t-shirt and I went and changed my shorts. And I said, Hayden was like, hey, I was like, hey, I gotta go. I gotta go upstairs and change shorts. And he goes, well, where are you going? And I was like, oh, that's my thing. Like, you don't know I'm leaving the house unless I actually put on like a decent pair of shorts. But hey, whatever. I'm not perfect. I have my many flaws, and my wardrobe is at the top of that list.
Yeah. And that sound you hear is people dropping bad reviews on iTunes.
For unrelated banter,
Yeah.
whatever. The bad reviews you get are like, my bad wardrobe. So whatever. It's people like the unrelated banter. They feel like it's opening them up to our home and who we are and what we do, and that's kind of also the direction of our podcast today. Is that we are a triathlon podcast, but that's not who we are. It is what we do. It is a sport that we love. It is a sport that creates opportunities for us to do great things for ourselves. It provides opportunities for us to meet people, provides opportunities for us to connect with people. It provides opportunities to get us more fit, to increase or to help us mentally and emotionally. But oftentimes it can just mask what we're trying to hide, what we're trying to cover up, what we're trying to not address, and being uncomfortable with who we really are as a person. And we are not we yes, we are triathletes, but you are Mike and I'm Robbie, and we are human, and we have our struggles, we have our past that drive us to who we are and what we end up doing, and our thought process, and our areas of confidence and our areas of insecurity. And that's how and why a lot of us get into endurance sports. And you and I were talking earlier about the new, I think it's a new HBO series, right, that they go back and talk to Olympians about, I think, mental health struggles.
Yeah, it's called The Weight of Gold. Michael Phelps, The Weight of Gold.
And you watched the whole thing, or you saw an
No, no,
excerpt
no,
from it?
no. I just heard about it and I watched the trailer, and I was telling you this morning that he said one thing that just kind of blew my doors off right now, because his quote was, and I thought at the time, I'm just a swimmer and not a human being. And it just really resonated with me because as I was mentioning to you earlier, while we're just quote unquote just triathletes or whatever, but I think a lot of us it's sort of like the amateur version of that. I mean, we all have that sort of same feeling at times, I think, where we identify with being triathletes, we identify with the race that's ahead, and the medal and the whole thing like that. And I just think that there's a real, albeit not as intense as the weight of a gold medal, it's still something that's very real in our lives. This sort of the way the world is now, it lets people kind of, do things that maybe weren't as accessible, when I was growing up, for example, just the Ironman race feels heavy to a lot of us, and I think there's some real analogy or real comparisons that we can make between even Olympic swimmers and Olympians and what we're going through, and how it can overtake our minds, and we can sort of self-identify as triathletes when we're actually human beings, and we kind of neglect that side of everything. And I thought I just think it's an interesting topic to talk about, especially with what's going on now. But I mean, you think about these poor kids, man, that are training for the Olympics for, like, we've talked about this a lot of times, how you say it's just like such a grind for, like, their whole lives, right? And then it comes down to it and then it gets canceled. So think about the weight of that. And then all of a sudden the same thing on a smaller scale is happening to us. And I just think it's a relatable topic that we can talk about, because we're all going through some stuff, man. I told you a story last night about me, about how bummed out I was, and like, it just hit me, like there's a lot of stuff going on that, like, you can be going good at one moment, and then turn on your go to your phone and then see a few comments that kind of get in your head, and of course I have just moved, so I'm unsettled with that. I'm unsettled. I've been moving to different places and before my place gets ready. uh Everybody's wearing masks. I'm in a new town. I can't meet anybody really. My father passed away earlier this year. We've got a lot of transitions going on. And it just hit me. I was swimming in the pool and I literally felt like crying. And man, what a feeling that is, to be like just pounding out. It's like, then, there's this intention, I think sometimes that we get, it's like force that out of you, So I just started swimming harder and harder. And I just felt like, like these tears kind of coming out into my goggles, and instead of emptying the water out, I was emptying tears at the end of the lane. But I was kind of joking about that, but like it was a
but you
real
did it
thing.
Well, like you bring up such a great point, and I think it's so important for everyone to understand this concept is that weight and trauma and hard and easy and great and poor and all these adjectives that we use are all relative. They are relative to you. Like people love to compare their times to Sally Sue down the street or Billy Bob down the road that are my time isn't as good as his and I want to beat them. But yet in other areas of their lives, you don't feel like comparison is fair, right? You have your own lives, yet when it comes to sport and it comes to the expression that we have, which is race day, we love to compare and we love to just mentally and emotionally flog ourselves because we're not as good as so and so, and I should be able to do that because they have this and they have that, and I should be doing this. Or Mike's dealing with his problems way, he's doing a much better job of managing this whole COVID and pandemic thing. He's just doing much better job. I want that. And like the truth is that there's not a single person that's listening to this podcast right now that has the exact same life. Not just right now, but for the last 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, however long it is, we've all had different lives. We've all had different experiences. And that started from like age 5, age 3, whenever. Like our life is cumulative. And like we always talk about cumulative fatigue and how it relates to fitness and how it relates to 70.3 and Ironman training, but like it's cumulative baggage and it's cumulative weight. Like yes, the weight of a gold medal can be enormous on an athlete, but the weight is relative. And the weight that you feel is just a direct representation of the baggage that you've either been forced to carry, that you haven't shed yet, or that you can't seem to get rid of. And that could be this pandemic. It could be job loss. It could be for you the loss of your father. It could be like life is just straight up hard. And we run to things like triathlon and we crave it and we become addicted to it because it gives us a semblance of control. And it becomes our identity because we either A, don't like the identity that we have. And then when triathlon is stripped from it, when Olympics are done, like I know Michael Phelps, he was like, when the Olympics are over, he was, huge depression. He's also somebody that's in recovery and like has had anxiety before, and plenty of Olympians have this. Like plenty of people, on the planet Earth have this. Like no matter what is, it's the same thing with people who dedicate their lives. You see this with professional athletes who dedicate their lives in the NFL or the NBA. They are at the highest, like they are on the high of the most supreme, accomplished athletes, and then you assume people on Earth, and then they retire, or they have like a season-ending injury or a career-ending injury, and a year later you see a headline that's like so and so is bankrupt, so and so is addicted to this and living out of a cardboard box, and his life is in shambles and whatever. Because yes, that can happen for a number of reasons, and we all have our falls, but at the same time, like a lot of it's so telling in that when we put so much stock in just becoming something that's not ourselves, or identifying ourselves as just a triathlete, or I'm just an entrepreneur and this is my successful business, and then you sell it or it's robbed, and then now you're like, well, who am I? Because I haven't spent time working on Robbie. I've spent time leaving Robbie alone in the corner to just continually feel depressed and anxious and horrible about himself. And I've neglected it even more. So he's actually getting worse. But all my energy has been focused on the triathlete, this person who I am, swimming, cycling, running, making sure I don't miss a workout, making sure I do this because I can control that. And that gives me some semblance of success. But when that's ripped away from you, it's gone. The only person left in the room is that dude in the corner. I and I can tell you this because I've done it. I have lived that life. I did it before I got sober for years. I ignored as much as I possibly could, the Robbie Bruce that I absolutely hated. I hated everything that I was. I hated everything that I did. I had no confidence. I had nothing. I hated what I was. But the only thing that I had, and I've talked about this before, is like the only thing that I had back then was triathlon. Like it, and I've said this on many occasions. It's probably saved me in a lot of ways. In terms of, yes, I had vices that were alcohol, and yes, I was drinking myself to death. But if I hadn't still had this love for a sport that I started to love before my ultimate hatred and ultimate depression and anxiety kicked in, then I don't know where I'd be. But I just left that dude in the corner. And then I finally got so sick and so down and so depressed, I couldn't even get on a bike. I couldn't even go for a run. I couldn't even make it to the pool. And then all I was left was that dude in the corner. And I ended up going to rehab, went for 90 days. And like, there's no other place like, and that's why, like, when the place that I went, like, they threw you in like the middle of nowhere and you got no access to anything because it forces you to only deal with you. Not the fun stuff. Not, you can still go fitness and you can still go to the beach today and you can still lay out by the pool at Passages in Malibu and you can do all these fun things. It was like, dude, you're here to work and you're going to be so tired from working on you that you're not going to have any energy for anything else. And that's what I did. And I know everyone doesn't have that same opportunity, nor does anyone want that same opportunity to do something like that. But like when it comes to the identity that we have and the identity that we crave, like we create, like, triathlon is a distraction for a lot of people, and it's a welcomed, healthy distraction that I think is a massive positive influence for so many people. It's a positive for you, it's a positive for me. It's something that we go to, it's something that we crave, it's something that we love, that we can go for a run and we can express our emotions in a positive way instead of going to the bar and slamming 10 glasses of vodka tonics. Like, yes, I would say the run is probably a net positive. It's the net win here, but it's the time that we invest in that relationship and the identity that is, this is who we are, not something that we do. And that the person you should be nurturing right now and nurturing along this journey is you. It's the Sally, it's the Tim. It's like, that's who you should nurture. You do triathlon and you can do it for a long time and it can be wonderful for you and you can use it as an escape when you need to. But just like all things in life, it's about how much and it's about when. And that's never been more important than right now.
It's funny you bring, not funny, but like when you bring up the recovery and going through that. I mean, my dad went through that as well. And there's an interesting analogy there because I remember growing up and he was always a really good golfer, relatively speaking, for people around my town and everything. And he didn't like it, but he kept doing it. And I think I think what he was always shooting for was, kind of a prize or some kind of accolade or something like that. But then he went through treatment, and when he came back, he didn't golf for a long time, but then he started golfing again, and he golfed and he loved it. He had a whole different meaning behind why he was going out there. He just loved it because he loved playing golf. He wasn't chasing low scores all the time or any of that kind of stuff. Low scores kept coming, and he got better actually. But he just, and that's the thing, right? It's like I told an athlete the other day, that was struggling with some workouts and things like that. And I said, dude, this is the time right now where I think that your number one focus should be on figuring out how to bring fun back into the sport and in the individual parts of it, and learning to, or not learning, but like just finding that joy in being able to ride a bike or wanting to go to the pool or go for a run or whatever, instead of looking at the training plan and being married to it. And if you don't nail it exactly, you're going to, lose some points, and then it's going to deflate your ego even more and blah, 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 and take you off course. Just find fun with it, man. Think about how much we chase things in life. It feels like we always chase. I was actually reading Stillness is the Key a little bit the other day again, Ryan Holiday. And yeah, I think that's where this quote comes from. It wasn't a quote, I can't remember the quote, but essentially it was saying, what if suddenly all your goals, all your dreams and everything else that you wanted in life were to just come to you instantly? Would you be happy? And whoever the quote was from said it was the biggest wake-up call I ever had, because they knew the answer was no. So like, what you're left with is what you have right now, regardless of what you're seeking. And that to me was a really heavy thought, because it's like we can all like kind of have, and that the thing is you go, it's so funny. Sometimes I'll turn to like I'll just go on YouTube and look for like positive stuff or whatever. And it's like, so much of it is kind of like, never be satisfied, never this, keep driving, keep going after your dreams and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, and I think there was a reference to Tiger Woods' dad in there. He said, like something like never be satisfied, or enough is a 4-letter word, and there's something beautiful about the idea of being content no matter where you are. And to me, that's always sort of the goal, I guess, is that, we can have these dreams and everything, but like, that doesn't mean that once you get, I mean, because how many times have we done, it's like finishing an Ironman. Like you get a little bit of a rush and everything's great for a while, but then like 2 days later, you're like, oh, man, that really didn't do it. I just spent 9 months crushing myself for that. And it was a high, like maybe I've never felt athletically or whatever coming through the finish line, but it's just, the reality is like, you got it, now what? And it's always going to be that. And like you said, life is hard, man. It just keeps pressing like that, unless you can kind of just sit back and be where you're at and be content with that, no matter what happens, and realize that that's kind of the challenge.
Well, let me ask you this. You
All
talked
right.
about chasing. I think one of the hardest things for us to self-navigate is if you and I walked out my front door after this podcast is over and we saw somebody running. One of us might think, dude, what's he running from? And the other one might say, dude, I wonder what he's chasing. And they can be totally different things. Like that, one of the things, my grandfather was someone I always looked up to. He was a father figure to me in so many ways. I had a better relationship with him than I did my own dad. And one of the things he always instilled in me was always ask yourself, are you running to something or are you running from something? Because how you do that and how you navigate in your mindset and what you expect to achieve from that is going to be totally transformed by, are you running from something, by avoiding it, by trying to distract yourself, by going this different direction or taking on this additional responsibility, or trying to achieve this goal when you think that's your way to success. But for a lot of us, we should move backwards. We shouldn't be running from something. We should be, from something that we're struggling with, or from an identity crisis. We should be chasing after those negative thoughts, the way that we see ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, like almost running backwards, like chasing the issues that we have in an aggressive, healthy manner. And so I think that's like, it's such a tough thing to I think wrap your brain around. And sometimes, and with all things in life, you can over question it. It's like when you are making big decisions, it's like, all right, am I really truly making this decision because I believe it's good? Is it my ego that's making this decision, or do I truly feel as like the most authentic version of myself that this is what needs to happen, this is the direction you need to go? And then you think, all right, well, is that the case? If that's the case, then yes. So you can overthink it, but I think it's important to really to ask ourselves these questions, is that because we are only given so much time and so much energy in a day, in a week, in a month, in our lives, that time spent doing anything is just insanely valuable. And I think we do a lot of things in life. I mean, our days are filled with distractions. Everything we do, the the small rectangular device that is probably in the grasp of your hand 80% of the day, is the most distracting thing on this planet. It is something that you can just escape your thoughts, escape your mind, escape your troubles, and just distract yourself in mindless oblivion, and then go one way and then come back and think, I have no idea what just happened and I'm totally lost. Wait, what's that again? Oh, look up. Somebody's, steak and potatoes on Instagram. Oh, that's great. Oh, look, a cat. Like we can do that all the time. Time and energy, if we really want to be successful, we really want to become the best versions of ourselves, is sometimes it means going backwards. Sometimes it means, instead of running from, you know, the identity that we have that we don't like, or the person that we are that we despise, or being depressed and being anxious. Like, you can use triathlon, you can use, fitness and doing things and participating in physical activity and being out in the sunshine, and like those are proven scientific ways to alleviate some of those symptoms. And for some people, they'll almost cure them. But at the same time, you can't just avoid. It's like the elephant in the room. Like, you can't, at some point you're gonna bump into it, and it's gonna be either scary, or scarier than it could have been, or it could be smaller depending on how you've approached things, how you've dealt with things. And like, I was telling you this earlier on the deck, is that, like, so many athletes right now are struggling with so many things. And it's been a really interesting kind of psychological observation as a coach. And I won't lie, it's been the hardest 4 months I've ever had as a coach. And I don't mean this as a training way, like, creating training plans from scratch every week and then erasing them and then doing them over again because races are getting canceled, restrictions are in place, quarantines are happening, like, everything is changing. That's been hard. It's caused more work, but it is what it is. But the hardest part has been reading, reading some, because Training Peaks for a lot of my athletes is like it's their journal, it's their safe place, like, that they can go and jot down about their day and how they're feeling and their emotions. And you were saying, like, the other day in the pool, like, you had like this emotional release, from swimming, that you almost teared up. And like, there was a day, gosh, I don't know, I think I told you this, like, there was a day probably 4 weeks ago. It was, well, no, it wasn't even that long. It was early July, because I was home alone. Allie and Hayden were in Florida, and I was reading through these Training Peak comments, and one of them stuck out, and I shared it with you. I won't mention it out loud, but, and I just lost it. I just started crying. It wasn't, yes, it was pulled out of me because of this one thread, but it was just something that had built up over the last 2-3 months of listening and watching and hearing so many people's struggles that have been magnified by what the last 3 to 4 months has done to people, with isolation and the removal of opportunities to connect with people and see people and sit down across from somebody you love and have that connection. Like, it's become impossible for some people to navigate, and it's been incredibly hard to watch people be ripped apart. Not ripped apart from people, but ripped apart from themselves, from what we need and what we so many of us crave as triathletes and endurance people. Like, we came to the sport because we need that thing. It's different for all, but we need that thing to get out, to run, to ride, to swim, to hike, to do whatever it is, and to disappear from the anxiety and the stress and the depression and the responsibility and the weight that is the world. Like, we need that time. And it was ripped from us, and it was robbed from us, and all we're left with, for many people, was that dude in the room I was talking about earlier. We've neglected for forever. Like, we can't leave the room and go nurture ourselves and come back and hopefully combat this person or help that person. We're just left there to sit in isolation, alone, and it's killing people. And it's been insanely hard to watch, but it's also made me understand and realize even more so from personal experience, but also as a coach, is like, what this sport, and it's a sport. It's not a costume. It's not an identity you create. It's not something that you put on. It is a sport. It is a hobby. But if you're able to use it in a way that is positive, it can. And this might seem over dramatic, but it can save you in a plenty of ways, in terms of allowing you opportunities to express your emotions, allowing I mean, I've had plenty of athletes say that they were brought to tears during workouts, and it wasn't because the workout itself brought them to tears. The swim you did the other day, depending on how hard it was, may or not have brought you to tears, but it wasn't the
Very
swim
hard.
itself that brought you to tears. It was, you felt in a safe place where the world was gone, that you didn't have to be on guard, that you didn't have to be the fine, tough, resilient, I've just got to make it through like everybody else is making it through, Mike Riley, and deal with it. It was like you get to be this vulnerable version of yourself, which is for most people, like the best place you can possibly be. And you're able to feel these emotions without distraction, because swimming is that. You can't take your phone with you. You can choose to put, earphones in, I guess, but you can't just have your phone by your side. You can't have your laptop. You don't get email alerts. It's just you and your thoughts. And you're left with this healthy emotional opportunity to express and let loose your feelings, and then they come up. And it's a good thing. And many people have had that taken away, or they're finding out how much they need it and they want it more, and they may have to find other ways to feel that, to be, because endurance sports, running, riding, swimming, is so many people's safe place. It's the one thing they feel that they can control, right? It's a lot of people have said that, doing all their workouts has been like their one saving grace to this whole thing, is that it's a one thing that I can control in life. And the biggest decision we have to make right now, every day, and I have tried to kind of flip the way that I phrase certain things with athletes recently, and instead of like do what you have to do or no worries here, it's just like whatever part of you feels like it needs to be nurtured today, do that. I don't care if you have a swim or a bike or a run or both or all three or whatever it is. If you wake up with the intent of doing one of those three, but the day in your life and your responsibilities and your stress or your anxiety or the weight of the world or the weight of your family or the weight of, what's going on in your personal and professional life is so much that you feel like the way to best nurture yourself so you can wake up and be better off the next day is to just simply take a walk with your kid down the street, then get up off your ass and walk with your kid down the street. Or if you feel like it's best by laying on the couch with your dog and watching, a whole season of, whatever, Schitt's Creek on Netflix, then do that. If that's what you feel like is going to set you for success the next day, then do that. It's not about being lazy. It's about understanding and recognizing what the ultimate best version of self-care is for you that day. And it might be totally different each day. And even though you wake up with the intent of, I got to run my bike today, I got to do these things, that's going to make me successful today. The most successful and the most responsible thing you can do every day that you're on this planet is make self-care a priority. And just because you skip a run or just because you skip a ride or just because you put off a swim, doesn't mean you're not motivated. It doesn't mean you're responsible. But what it meant is you told the triathlon or triathlete version of yourself that, you know what, you are important, but who I am, the human version of me, the one that needs me today, needs this more than I need that. And that is a 100% okay and acceptable, and in fact, responsible and healthy conversation to have for yourself. You should never, ever apologize for missing a workout. It's a workout, It's not like, you woke up, you were in, a Catholic boarding school for 15 years and you missed, service one morning to apologize for that. Like, that's not how it works. It's a choice. And every day we have choices of how we use our time, how we use our energy, what we feel like is going to be the best for ourselves. And some days that's going to be going for a 30-minute run. And that's going to be going for, and most days it probably is. But some days, and especially when things are magnified, some couple days, it might just be, I just need time to kind of get back to like baseline, right? It's like, because we've all been thrown like a curve. What we thought in life was a baseline is now something totally different. And you just have to understand that it doesn't make you unmotivated. It doesn't make you uncommitted. It doesn't make you not a triathlete. It doesn't make your goals any less important. It doesn't mean that you're not going to achieve them. It just means, you know what, when you do get there, the person who's putting on the cap, who's putting on the goggles, who's going to hop on the bike, who has these goals, that person is going to be ready. Not just physically, but they're going to still be around emotionally and mentally, because they're not going to be burnt out. They're not going to have sacrificed relationships, not with other people, but they're not going to sacrifice the relationship with themselves. I feel like we are at minute 65 of this podcast, because this is usually how I bring things home, and then I glance down and we're not even at 40 minutes yet. I'm starting to start my negative split into my descending negative split a little too early.
Blow up, dude. You're gonna blow up. The last 10 minutes is just gonna be you dragging your feet along and wide-eyed. Your big
people are going to give us a hard time for giving up the, the first 10 minutes. That's like, unrelated to triathlon, and people, that's where we get
See,
a lot
that's
of
what you get.
one-star
Well, maybe you
reviews.
never know.
And
You know,
now,
just a
now
good
it's
warm up.
now it's going to be 1-star. One of the co-hosts totally bonked at like minute 41. He had nothing left to give for the last 20 minutes. So I'm gonna grab a goo. And we're gonna keep going. But it's true, man. It's like, we it's the one thing that it's the one thing that we tell ourselves that we can control. I was having this conversation with an athlete yesterday who is which a lot of triathletes are, very, very, very high level type A control freaks. I have this set today, and because I have it set today that I have a 35-minute run and an hour and 15-minute bike, or I have a swim today, then it's going to get done, because it is my right as a person who has a type A personality and that I'm a control freak. It's my right for this to happen today. But then other things come in and your life suddenly changes overnight, or your life suddenly changes in a week, and you think, oh, wait a minute, like my life is totally different when I was making this plan, yet I still think I'm owed this plan to be fulfilled and be perfectly executed. And if not, then it's horrible. And that's like one of the biggest struggles for triathletes and athletes in general right now, is that not only is life unpredictable, right? And not only is like the swimming pool being open or swimming pool being closed, or I can run or I can't go ride, or I can go right here but not in a group, and or these places are closed, and if I can swim it's for 30 minutes one day, an hour the next, and I got to reserve a lane, I got to show up, and I got to wait, I got to wear a mask, and then my race is canceled but this other one isn't, so am I still training? What am I training for? It's like the ultimate limbo, and triathletes especially hate being in limbo. They hate not, you know, knowing exactly where their feet are planted, heading towards their ultimate destination. They have their compass in their hand. They know what's going on. They feel empowered. They're in control. And right now, it's just like, what? It's like you went from having your compass ready to head north towards your ultimate goal race, and now you've basically been blindfolded and spun around 100 times with the bat like you're getting ready to swing at a pinata. That is basically where we find ourselves. And most people, I mean, I'd say everyone, but hates that feeling, because you feel lost. And one of the because we love to plan, we love to look in the future, we love to look at what's coming down the pipeline, because that's what gets us out of bed someday, is that visualization. And now, what is it? I mean, I still do it to this day, even this week. Like, I visualize a race. I visualize what's going, like when I'm doing a workout, I'm doing interval training, like I like to visualize a race experience, right? And so right now I think it's hard for people to wrap their brain around when that's going to be. And I think that's one of the things you can probably flip in terms of this is how you operate, and you're a person who has this vision of crossing the finish line at, on this day at this event with this time, like, then I don't know what it's going to be, or I don't know if it's going to happen. It leaves it up in air. But there are certain types of visualizations that you can control. Like for me, every time I visualize myself, if I'm doing intervals on the bike, or I'm on a long run, or I feel like I'm pushing hard, I never visualize a time. I never visualize a competitor. I never visualize a specific result. I always visualize an experience that, and the clock is never in view. It's never me standing on a podium. It's never me, accepting a slot to Kona. It's never anything like that for me. And again, this is for me. And we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, like take it, mold it, rework it, remix it, whatever you want to do, make it your own. But for me, it's always something to do with Hayden. I have two that I use a lot. One is just seeing him at the finish line and knowing that when I see him, he will have seen me totally empty the tank and just leave it all out there. That he can see me on the course and he can clap for me and he can yell for me. Those are the experience that raised me. I'm getting chills right now. That like raised me to a different level of effort, because I want that, because I want him to see his dad work hard. I want him to see what it's like. I want him to feel like these things are important. And if he doesn't think they're important, that's fine. But I want him to know that these are things he can do and accomplish if he wants to. And then the other one is I guess this one is time related. It's a total lie. Is I picture myself finally beating a time from when I was actively drinking, a time that I have not got. I've been like 2 or 3 minutes away from repeatedly. and it is time related. But for me, it's not necessarily representation of a fitness level or an ability. It is kind of shedding that monkey off your back of not how I see myself, but that it's still possible. You know, like it's one of those things for people who are in recovery is you still kind of beat yourself up about for the way that you were, or things you could do and now you can't do them now. For me, it's that, like, I don't ever wish I could drink again. That doesn't tempt me or crave me or whatever. It's just like, I want that kind of last little bit of, like, finished business, per se. And so crossing the finish line and knowing that, my best times are all now allocated towards the sober side of my triathlon career is something that's important to me. I'd be totally lying if I said it wasn't. It is important to me, and I'm sure it'd be incredibly emotional, when that day comes, because I fully expect it to. But so, like, visualizing those experiences and those emotional releases, I think, are positive things that we can do right now instead of, a deadline or an exact date of when it's going to happen, because we never know. Yeah, we never know when the next race day is going to come. That's something that I think we'll all now fully understand and cherish and be grateful for, is that you're never going to take the next race for granted. You're never going to show up thinking like, I'll probably just kind of cruise on this one because I got an opportunity next month. Are you sure about that? And so the way that we can approach things, not just with racing, but with practice, with our training, with life, is that we just don't know. We don't know when the next opportunity is going to come. So we can neglect, we can distract, we can lose focus, but ultimately we have an opportunity, and to an extent a responsibility, every day to do our best and to focus on ourselves and to bring the best out of ourselves. And that can look like any number of things each day. So it's almost a disservice if we wake up today and say the only measure of success today is that Mike Triathlete goes to the pool and gets a 2,000-yard swim in, or Robbie gets on his trainer and does an hour and 15 minutes and then goes run. Those are the only measures of success. And if I can't do that, then I'm failing. That's a very small part, and frankly, a very uneventful, unrelated part of our day that's surrounded by another, you know, 21, 22 hours of life that is uncontrollable, that is unpredictable, that is stressful, that is crazy. And so, to measure success by the hour and a half that we can control, and not measure the success by how we deal with the ins and outs of life, and the weight that it can throw at us, like, that's how you should end the day with success. It's how, and managing both is the perfect day, right? It's the grand slam. But it's going back and forth and understanding how am I going to nurture the side of me that needs to be successful, so when I lay my head down at night, I can think, dude, I owned it today. And this is going to give me confidence to wake up the next day and not just hit my workouts and hit life, but be able to do both.
You got a little second wind there, buddy.
Do rock team with caffeine, baby. I'm ready to roll. Hit me with it. I'm bringing home for the last 6 2.
Let me sneak in here real quick. You can close it down.
Good. I need to cruise.
I was thinking, you were talking about, never missing a workout. People that never want to miss a workout because it kind of weighs on them, whatever. And it just reminded me of, I'm going through this process of getting a mortgage for my new condo, and I'm going through all this paperwork and all these, like, nickel and dimes and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, hey, I haven't been late or missed a mortgage payment in 15 years. I said, what about that? And they go, nah, that doesn't really matter. We don't really look at that. I was like, oh, okay. So I just thought it could be a little analogy. It's sort of like, yeah, okay, you never want to miss a workout, or you're never looking at anything outside of that. But why? Because, like, it's not like anyone else really looks back on that. If that's the thing that I guess makes you most whole, then there's got to be something else in there, I think. I was also thinking about, you were talking about, I think a little bit about connecting, and how I'm honestly thankful for this podcast, because it really is an opportunity for us to sort of vent those things that go on inside our brains, and we talk about, from the beginning, are we an athlete or a human? And I think that sometimes it's easy to or get that confused in our head, and try to sort that stuff out on our own is very difficult. Like, as in, you get kind of wrapped up in being the triathlete, and then it's like, but man, my life is so much bigger than this. But it's very difficult when you don't have anybody to kind of, bounce that off, and have someone to be able to talk these things through. And many times it's just being able to say them or have it come out in the open that becomes the healing process, right? I mean, because you got like that thing about me in the pool and at the other day, I always think about this because I heard one time that somebody said that when things in life get the hardest, when you're really feeling like things are just too hard and you don't know how you're going to get through it, that is a signal that you're about to break through. And that is why when things get the hardest, that's why we got to kind of push the hardest, because on the other side of that is another level of something, and maybe another level of awareness and just contentment that we talk about. But like at some points, you can't back down. You kind of got to, when it's hard, recognize that it's hard for a reason, because maybe you're pushing through to something bigger. And on the other side of it, and it does seem like that if you look back. I mean, like, think about how many experiences you've had in your life where it just seemed way too hard, and then just right around the corner there was something good waiting. But it's just almost like a test or something where we have to battle through a little bit just to kind of prove it to ourselves that we want it, and then we can kind of sit back and then move towards the next layer, and then it's going to happen over and over again. But I think we all go through those difficult moments that seem almost too hard to navigate, but it's probably
People
best
go
that we
through that
figure
with
it out.
training. Yeah, but people go
Yeah.
through that with training too. Like, and I tell athletes this all the time, especially like a specific few, that when they get really down and they feel like they're like, Coach, I'm getting slower. Like, I just feel so tired. I'm like, do you remember the last time you felt this way? A few days later, you had a gigantic breakthrough. And your body does the same thing, as long as you're not like, ridiculously and irresponsibly overtraining, overexerting yourself. When you become so tired, you become so fatigued, you become so shot that your body's like, wait, like I'm dealing with this, and your body responds with, all right, now what? And then when you combine the now what and I got this with, like, a good a mental and emotional space, you're like, dude, I'm there. This is outstanding. Like, this is where I'm at. And so your body does the same thing. When you're hitting rock bottom. But yeah, I mean, that's like, there were periods in my life where I literally, even after I got sober, because I was dealing with so much in life, I was like, there were days that if I had really thought about it, about the weight that I was carrying and the weight of what I had to deal with and the weight of what I had to face, I probably wouldn't have got out of bed. I would have been like, you know what, this is too much, and I can't control any of it. I just got to do my best. I wouldn't have done anything, got out of bed. But instead, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get up and see what I can do, and then see what happens. And then 7, 8 years later, here I am, still standing. And I'm being able to use those experiences and those struggles in a positive way, and leaning on them not for weakness, but now for strength, is something that I'm incredibly grateful of. Instead of going back and looking that I gave up, or I failed, or I could have done this, or I could have done that, and living in regret, I can live, a totally different, I have a totally different perspective on where things are going now based on where I've been.
Hmm. I think that's a really great point, dude. It's like
Good.
sometimes the hardest thing is that first step, and like, I mean, it's just like that. When you wake up from sleep, man, and if you weigh yourself down right away, I think a lot of us kind of ignore these little things that seem insignificant, but like just taking your time waking up, for example, whether it be just moving your legs around, moving your feet, and kind of stretching a little bit. And I mean, look at dogs, man. They wake up, the first thing they do is kind of go into a little stretch and say, hey, I'm almost ready, but then, they can turn it on. But it's sort of like we just ignore these things and pop right out of bed, look at our phone, get the wrong crap going through our heads immediately. And like you're saying, man, I remember some of those times, and it is remarkable that you just stepped in the fire. And that's like the Bukowski quote that we love is, I mean, at some point, we can try and shield ourselves all we want, but sometimes you just have to jump in that cold water and just see what happens, or jump in that fire and walk through it, because it's never going to be easy. You said, in the beginning, life is hard, man. It's tough. And 90% of the time, that is all about creating momentum to push through certain things that seem insurmountable at the moment. But once you get, how it goes, man. It's like you show up everybody shows up at that Ironman and they're scared. But once they get in the arena and they get around the people and they see the energy and all that kind of stuff, then you kind of get a change of pace. But it's getting there. It's getting there. It seems mysterious before you go, and it seems like something that's like this big monster. But once you get there, it's kind of like you familiarize yourself with it, and you're feeling like, oh, I feel okay now. I'm ready to go. But you can talk yourself out of that super easy.
And it's like, yeah, and I've thought about this so many times. It's like, you see people and you're like, oh, they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Like they came of influence. They were very lucky. They came with privilege. But a lot of people, myself, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. A lot of us end up choking on it because we don't know what it's like, and we don't have to go through these obstacles and these things that are incredibly tough, or we just choose not to manage them or not to do it, or you hit rock bottom like I did and you're like, okay, now I've got no utensils. Now I need to figure out what to do with my life, and you end up doing the best you got to do, and now you look back on it and think, I don't want it ever that way. Like, it's not that you want it to be hard, because I don't want life to be hard. That's hard right now. That's freaking brutal. I don't want that. But what I do appreciate is that I wouldn't be able to navigate the difficulty that is life right now without having gone through what I have and somehow making it out on the other side. And that's what we should all do, is do the best we can each day we wake up, whether it's through meditation or through conversation or with connecting with friends or watching a movie with your spouse or your kids or going out for a ride or a run. It's like connecting with yourself, nurturing for yourself, and being able to just make it to the next day, put on your gloves and fight again. And that's what we should do, is just understand that that is the ultimate goal, and to be the best that we can be, and to try to be happy, try to be healthy. And that's going to look different every day because our needs are going to be different every day. Our responsibilities are going to be different every day. None of it's predictable. And it might look good on paper, it might not, and it might look good in your training peaks, and it might look good on Strava, but that's just a drop in the bucket. Because the training that is a drop in the bucket, if you're not dropping in other things with life and filling up your cup, then it's going to dry out. You're going to go dry. And the last thing you want to do is do that right now. So fill your cup, get out there, do things that make you happy, go on adventures, chase experiences, connect with people, do what you need to do every day to just be freaking happy, and be apologetic to no one for that.
I agree, man.
Barely made it across the finish line. I stumbled. Yeah, I stumbled there towards the end. Like I got those newborn baby deer legs, like trying to 20 yards away from the finish. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna make it. Oh, he's gonna make it. Whew. I made it. Definitely got to start pacing myself better since we hop into these podcasts full throttle a little bit earlier than we usually do. But that was fun. I enjoyed the day. I usually give us a solid 5 or 6 on a scale of 1 to 10 for a podcast. Today I'm going to give that a solid 6.8. And if you want to round up, call it a 7. I'll call it a 7 out of 10. We hope it was helpful. We hope you got something out of it. We always do. We appreciate you tuning in and listening and giving us your time. We know you have a lot of choices in the podcast space in general, but also the triathlete or triathlon space. So we value that, and we value you as a listener and being a part of our wonderful community. If you want more info on what we do, coaching, camps, and community, you can always hop on over to our website, c26triathlon.com. If you ever want to be in contact directly with Mike and I, no matter what, is you can hit up Mike directly, crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can always reach out to me directly, c26coach@gmail.com.
We forgot to say that in the beginning again.
Dude, we're the worst.
We're terrible.
I know, dude.
Well, we're going to be the unmarketers of the world. So maybe that'll be a breath of fresh air.
The non-marketers. Yeah, we do. Listen, we're naturally very good at that. But be on the lookout. I'm about to start our C26 triathlon / crushing iron TikTokagram. That is going to have a new account, and we're going to be really blasting out some influencing type videos with the newest hits. Is that what people? That's what it's called, right? That's what people are doing. TikTokagram. Yeah.
TikTokagram. Yeah. Any way we can take your focus off of what's really important.
That's right.
We're not going to add to that fuel. I think. I feel like that's been a natural thing for us to kind of pull back from being that. I mean, we know that like our Instagram blows and our TikTok doesn't exist, and we do these things, but I kind of feel like that maybe at some place in someone's heart, that is like a welcome. It's sort of like, thank you for not doing that. Thank you for not bombarding me with something that is sort of cool for like a split second, and then I move on to the next thing. Man, it's got to be deep.
Dude.
Deep.
I mean,
deep
I'm still the guy that thinks that Tinder is a currency exchange app. So you're not going to get much help. You're not going to get much help from me. But we hope this helped. We hope this podcast helped, not just with your training, but with your life, because ultimately, that's what's of value to Mike and I as both people and athletes and co-hosts of this podcast and everything that we do with our athletes and with this community is that we hope it brings value to not just swim, bike, run, but to your life. And we hope you got that from us today. We'll be back next Monday, hopefully better than ever, but always mediocre and subpar. And we will see you then.
All right, buddy. Take it easy,
dude.